Welcome to the family office. Planning for the people who matter most.
That's right.
Where do you want to go next on this one?
Do you want to talk about AI or do you want to talk about World Cup?
I think that the AI stuff is pretty fascinating. What's going on? I don't know if you had a chance to look at that or not. But the AI
Why
job
don't you
shift
start it off and start it off and I'll react.
Well, there's a lot of interesting things I think going on in AI right now, and specifically centered around Anthropic. I think Anthropic is starting to become a breakout player, and they're becoming a breakout in ways that you wouldn't think they're becoming in breakout. And what I mean by that is that they're basically putting their hands up and saying, please regulate us and restrict us, is what they're saying. Right. But I don't think that that's a good thing. And I think that's going to lead to more harm than good when you start restricting stuff. Right. Because when you start, history has shown us that when you restrict stuff, it makes the situation worse. It does. I mean, look at, all you have to do is study American Prohibition. If you have kids, all you have to do is study when you tell them that they can't have candy. And then all of a sudden when they discover candy, they don't stop eating candy because it's new to them, right? It's novel. The human brain works on novelty. So with AI, what's interesting to me is that there's been this doom and gloom thing. And I was never on the doom and gloom side of the AI jobs thing. I never was. I know there's a lot of people. I've always
You're
been
right.
optimistic.
Every time we've argued, you've always been on the optimistic side. That's a fact.
What's interesting here now is that the data is now starting to come out. And see, before when we were making these predictions, nobody had data. We had theory, but now we actually have data. And after AI has sunk its teeth in for the last 2 years, almost 3 years now, the number one thing that we're seeing AI be good at is, do you know what it is? Everybody, you know what it is, right? It's coding. It's coding. That's like the biggest thing is coding. Like all of a sudden, like holy moly, AI's we've found a way to code very efficiently. In fact, I was just watching the CEO of Palo Alto Networks talk about how his product goes in and finds compromised code and fixes it. What would have taken years to find compromised code, the AI is finding it and patching the code, right? So that's that's a good thing. But at the same time, what you're seeing now is that even though coding has been the most impacted area of AI, developers are being hired more now than they were before. So now you're seeing more people get hired to be developers rather than being fired. And you're seeing more job growth and you haven't even seen the new jobs that AI is creating. So I just think that a lot of people that go out there and spread this, and now Sam Altman's walking it back, the CEO of Anthropic's walking it back, all these people are walking it back. And I just think it's very telling now that exactly what I think is going to happen is going to happen. Now you're going to have displacement. You can't not have that. Look, the U.S. economy destroys 23, 24 million jobs every cycle, every economic cycle, every year. So you're going to have displacement no matter what. But the reality here is that it's not as bad as everybody was saying it is going to be. In fact, the numbers are in the opposite direction. We're getting more jobs out of AI than we were before that. I think the biggest problem, Len, and I'll jump over to you before I say it, is something else with these companies. But Len, what's your perspective on this?
Okay, so I think what's going on with AI as we take a look at what's really happening and as we look at the numbers start to come to pass is that there is this future fear versus current reality. And the current reality is saying that net AI has been a significant, groundbreaking net benefit to so many people who utilize it. There's so many ideas that suggest that AI is going to surpass the internet in terms of its importance and its revolutionary types of changes. Like, for example, they've gone through and looked at, DNA sequencing and looking at different patterns and being able to solve different diseases. And so there's so much on the horizon in the medical space. And then when you look at law, you can look at different precedents that's happened throughout all of history because that information is easily accessible. You talked about already the idea of being able to find, because, with coding, if you've got one little character that's off in a million lines of code, that is going to break. And so it's going to, we're going to have fewer bugs. We're going to have, more efficiency as it relates to building using coding. And so in the current times, It could not be more efficient. Like my employees do probably 2.5 to 3x the amount of productivity and output as pre-AI because of ChatGPT and all the different tools.
It's an enhancement of tools, right?
100%. Now, what I do understand is the fear that people have, but I think they are projecting and they are creating unnecessary stress on themselves. Like kids that are graduating right now, they're so many of them are anti-AI because they're saying, look, on the one hand, you're telling us not to use ChatGPT, you're telling us not to use code, you're telling us not to use Claude, you're telling us not to use these tools. But we need these tools to work in the workplace, So there's
why is education so counterproductive in that way, or is it just not figured out how to prevent independent thinking or plagiarism? Like what
education is like a super tanker. They're very slow to change, and so because they're so slow to change, they don't know how to maneuver quickly. So the problem is that kids do use AI tools to cheat. That is a fact. But you've got to find ways to work around that. Because if I'm a college professor and I know that we've got ChatGPT, I'm going to make sure when they come into the room, they're going to work in groups. I'm going to watch them problem solve. And then I can give them work to use those tools outside of the class. So I'll still be able to create a classroom environment where they're still going to learn, but use those tools to enhance their learning because they're going to use it in the real world. So why try to bend reality in this fake structure and construct of the classroom? But that whole future fear, because what projections are saying, which is real, is that lawyers could become a thing of the past especially like paralegals who go and look at case law and stuff like that, creating arguments. AI is going to be able to create fantastic arguments. It's still going to take the person to be able to articulate it, but having to learn everything under the sun to go and pass the bar exam, that's going to be a thing of the past, like cursive. It's going to be optional. I think accounting and bookkeeping is going to be optional. But to your point, where I think we agree, is that I believe that ultimately a net positive of innovation is going to happen as a result of AI. But final point, I do believe that innovation should be allowed to run free, but I do think we need to have eyes and ears. So if things start to get off the rails, we're ready to efficiently place guardrails where people or the environment or something could be hurt beyond repair. But I think there should be a high degree of freedom. I think we should, err to being a little too free versus erring to being oppressive as it relates to this type of technology. Because if the United States overregulates, China's not. I can tell you that right now.
And then that's the problem, is that you see an Anthropic saying, "Oh, regulate." Well, that's not the right answer, because think about that. You've built this model and now you're not allowing people to use this model. So now, how do we know whether or not you're giving the same answer to Joe that you are to Jack? Mm-hmm. See, that's, and what that's going to do, which I'm happy about, I think it's a good and a bad thing, is it's going to force, like, what's to say you and I don't go and find some developers and have them build our own LLM? What's to stop anyone now from building your own language models, building your own chat, your own bots? Because eventually that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. It's happening already right now. So why would you not develop it? So I think that when you start suppressing stuff like that, it creates a very big problem. It creates a very big problem. And now you have censorship in regards to AI. Now AI is going, oh, wait a minute, I can't say this, or I can't do this because of this restriction. Well, you're free. You're now allowing tech companies to have a lot of power, even more so than they have today. So if you don't want a techocracy to happen, then this stuff needs to be open. It needs, and I think that was Elon Musk's whole argument was, dude, let it open, open source. But he's also from that time period in tech where an open source came out and completely dominated, like the IBMs and the Microsofts of the world that had closed source coding. And all of a sudden, like, you remember that when Mozilla Firefox came out and obliterated Internet Explorer? because it's all open source code, right? So when you allow stuff like that, I mean, and you're right, Len, what's going to stop Chinese people from having open source code? What's going to stop the world from having open source code? That goes back to my exact argument about why the green stuff in America is such a farce. The green stuff is really an illegal Ponzi scheme for all the people that run it.
I don't think it's the green part. I think it's the idea that I believe that what you're really saying is this notion of climate change is fake. Because don't you believe that like solar and wind energy, using it in conjunction with the existing technologies and energy is important? Because as the population grows, as we have better technologies to access wind and the sun, don't you think that's a net good thing?
No, I think it's horrible.
Why?
Hydroelectric is great because it makes sense. Hydroelectric makes sense because you already have running water.
What's bad with solar? What's wrong with solar?
All you have to do is look at the desert between California and Nevada and look at that massive solar farm that's not even active anymore. You know what I'm talking about? You drive to Vegas?
Yeah.
But you know the size of that operation. You know it's not even. You know it doesn't even work anymore. It doesn't work.
It's crazy. But
why?
Because that's just bad management, though.
Yeah, I understand that, but here's the reality. What's going to stop another bad manager? Look, solar is what the panels chip. You got inclement weather, depending on where it's at, the windmills, the maintenance. Half the time, you just drove through Palm Springs. Half the time, 80% of those windmills aren't even turning, those turbines. You have so many seasonal and so many environmental impacts that create that. I think that if you actually look up the amount of money that was spent on that crap, it's actually a net negative, most likely, I think, than it is if you would have taken that money and invested it in nuclear and fusion power.
Now, I'm with you on nuclear and fusion power. I'm just saying all of it. Use all of it.
I don't think so. I think it's a waste of money. I think it's money. I think it's a right thing to do short term, because I'm about the environment, by the way. I'm not like this club the seals and dump in the rivers. Like, I want environmental safeguards. I'm big on that. I like that. I don't want to drink water. Like, for example, and this is the fault of the politicians. Why is it that Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean drinking water? What the frick is going on there? Why? Because we allowed Nestle to go and steal all their water and sell it to everybody, right? So Nestle can get clean water out of Michigan. Why can't freaking
government? They should allow private.
It's exactly what it is. Len, I have a serious question for you.
Okay,
what would happen if we privatize the entire education system?
I think what would happen is within the matter of 15 years, all of education would be free, and the reason why I say that is because what corporations would do is they would invest in career pathways. So, for example,
that's genius. Go with it. I want to hear this. I'm
an AI company, and I start to, so I work with elementary, middle, and high school, and we start to develop courses and curricula around what would be great. And kids that tend to show interest in it, kids that do well within it, on those different platforms where the kids are online or at school. As a company, I'm going to invest in those schools so that other companies that are adjacent companies to me could also pour money into those platforms. And so therefore the kids aren't having to pay, the teachers can still get paid, and the companies begin to funnel and pour funds into these educational institutions. Why? Because by the time you go and get a generalized education, you go off to college, when you come to me, I've got to spend a bunch of money to train you anyway. So I know that in the beginning, it would be a bit clunky because kids don't necessarily grow up knowing exactly what they're going to do because, they get exposed to different things. But you create a curriculum where these companies get together and say, look, maybe you're going to be a blue collar worker where you're going to work with your hands. So maybe it's in, engineering or mechanics and stuff like that. Or you might be white collar where you're working on, in the AI space. And so I just believe that over time, these processes would get more and more efficient. Why? Because that companies that are in the private sector optimize for efficiency. So as they become more efficient and more effective, they can figure out how to develop that curriculum to attract more kids. And then they funnel the money to these different entities to make all of those processes happen.
I think the trade schools are best positioned right now. Because, I mean, can you imagine
100%.
if you created a custom curriculum for engineers, electricians, plumbers? Like, you could sit here and go, hey, by the way, I could have a plumber ready for you in 3 years, 2 years. Just with my curriculum and my training. Len, why are we not starting an education company? I don't understand.
Right. No doubt. I mean, there's so many lobbyists, but to your point, because look, if all the companies got together and said, look, we want to make sure that our kids have a baseline of education. So in their elementary school years, they're getting the basics. It doesn't have anything to do with a specific. And then in middle school, you start routing them. Okay. These are the kids that are more athletically inclined. So now you build the curriculum around that. And then you spend from 6th grade to about 10th grade of exposing kids to all these different types of areas to find out who's proficient and enjoy what they're doing. And then 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, that's where they become more and more specific and focused. And by the time they go to, the college years, they're ready to be really trained because they've been exposed. Because how many kids are out there who go through 13 years, kindergarten through 12th grade, and they have no clue what they want to do? That's the education system's fault because they haven't been exposed.
When I started working in IT when I was 18, my company paid for me to get my A+, which was your certification. But I was like, if my company hadn't done that, I wouldn't have stayed in IT.
Exactly.
So so I think that, there should be a K through 12, right? And there should be some type of unified system for K through 12, right? I hate that kind of language because it's so government, but I agree with, look, basic math, reading, arithmetic, so that you're then prepared to go to the private institutions to figure out, hey, you know what? I want to be a freaking astronaut. I want to be that, just throwing out arbitrary jobs, but I don't. Yeah. You know what's funny, Len? I don't know why you're not a Trump fan, because Trump's all about abolishing the Department of Education. Like,
look, I have views that align on both sides, and the thing is, I'm a business guy, and I'm an educator, and I'm pragmatic. I'm not going to virtue signal and stuff like that. So to me, like, for example, just to tie a bow in it, think about all of the internship opportunities that are being missed, because like as an employer, I would love to have a bunch of 17 to 19-year-olds in my facilities learning how, and then they can decide, look, I love this or I hate it. Okay, no problem. Then you go intern in a completely different field. And I think that having business and school systems become more connected, I think that's just such a more pragmatic approach that would allow kids to be exposed and to have real world experience. Because my wife went to college thinking she wanted to do one thing in psychiatry and got to the place on day one and said, I'm out of here. This is not what I imagined at all. So imagine if she didn't have another adjacent career opportunity, she'd be doing something completely different than her major. If you go and take a look at statistics outside of, like people who have jobs outside of their majors, I was a business major, went into education. I just happened to come back to business because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So yeah, we need to definitely revolutionize the educational system.
I don't think there's any other solution. I think that that's the only solution that I don't want to say only. Sure. I think that's one of the best solutions we have right now to help people and help all of us transition right now is to get really, really focused and really pragmatic about, hey, dude, what do you want to do? And whatever you want to do, we're going to help you do it and show you and say, hey, look, I want to be a art curator. And then someone's going to sit down with you and not say, okay, get into $400,000 of debt and then come out with a useless degree. They're going to sit there and go, look, Susie, I love that you want to do that. However, we would advise against doing it based on your testing that you've done, and by the way, you volunteered to do this, right? I mean, you're signing up for this. Yep. These are the career paths that you'd be best at. And here's what's hot right now. Well, the best career paths you have, only 2 of these industries are hot and are going to be hot for the next 20, 30 years. Which one are you most passionate about? Len, when I first got into insurance, I wasn't passionate about selling insurance. Nobody wants to freaking do that, right? But what was passionate about to me was the fact that I could learn how to become an entrepreneur. And that is what was exciting to me, was learning how to communicate with people, how to recruit people, how to lead people, how to inspire people, how to motivate people. Because then it was like, oh, this is easy. All I got to do is just come over here and do it again over here and again and again and again and again and again, because the skill sets you learn are infinite and they're evergreen. So I think if we can get people more into that situation, then you won't have as much of a massive hard impact when you start seeing displacement, because you will ultimately displacement. It's just, if we want to soften it, we have to get very pointed and I guess we have to actually really help people when we do college admissions and not just get them a loan for whatever they freaking want to do and say, hey, you know what? Like, cause think about it, Len, we put so much weight on saying, oh, we should tell people not to do this because it could be against the law and la, 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 la. But then we don't say, oh, by the way, you ought not to get into $250,000 of debt for this useless degree or this useless job. Because when you see the commencement speeches with these colleges and these things that are happening the last month and before, and they bring up AI, all these college kids are going, F you, man. Because they're like, bro, I just spent 4 years getting to debt for nothing, dude. So that's the fault of the politicians. It's the fault of the college systems. It's the fault of the education system. But
all right, man. Hey, Chris, till next time. Have a great one. All right.
You too.
Bye.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.